Okay, well, welcome. Tim Eggert with Sheyenne Tooling and Manufacturing. Actually, it's a couple meetings ago, met with Aaron just at our first meeting and thought the opportunity would be good to present in front of you guys and get more involved with this association. So I'm glad you guys could come up and see what we got going on here. So I do want to first start off with just a little bit of background, what Sheyenne Tooling and Manufacturing is about. It is a business that was founded back in 1977, and back at that time, really had the goal of being a premier supplier, of tooling and die type manufacturing services to some of the big players in the region: John Deere, Bobcat, Case New Holland. So it is a company that's been around a long time. 1996, they acquired the Wesco grain auger. 2005, got into the sunflower header business. 2010, got into the snowblower business as well as a ditcher line. And most recently here in December of 2018, my wife and I purchased in as majority shareholders into the business. And really the takeaway here and what Sheyenne is really about and what it's going to be about in the future is about taking care of our customer and delivering on commitments. Obviously, if you've been around since 1977, that's something that has to be there, otherwise you wouldn't be around for so long. The next piece is basically building in that operational excellence piece to really make it a successful, healthy business. So up in the left-hand corner there, you'll see basically inserting operational DNA. I was going through these slides last night with my wife, and she said, well, that kind of looks like a resume. Apologize if it comes across like that, but I thought it was important to share my background and some of the experiences that I've had, because that's basically what fuels the passion that I have for these process improvements and for the things that I'm doing, and ultimately the business is going to be passionate about that. Just a little bit of background. Industrial engineer from NDSU, so I know a lot of you guys are up from the Grand Forks area. I was going to put a big bison head on there, just to rub it in a little bit, but figured I better not do that. But spent 18 years with Bobcat, so that's my main experience. Most of it was in an operational type of role, but really throughout the whole career it was really focused on process and process improvement, whether it was systems, whether it was in our dealerships as a Bobcat company, whether it was process improvements for launching new products. But what I really enjoyed was just working in factories and working on processes and improving them in factories. So I spent a period of time as a plant manager down at the main attachment factory in Litchfield, Minnesota. And then after that, spent a period of time at the Gwinner factory building Bobcats, excavators, and tool cats. So really provided the foundation of what we're doing here in Cooperstown. You can kind of see from a comparison, Litchfield was about 83 employees, jumped up to Gwinner, which was about 1,400 employees. But part of the interest with Tricia and I in getting involved in this business was we really enjoyed that Litchfield smaller town type feeling. Being able to actually be involved in the business and seeing that direct impact. So here in Cooperstown, we've got 40 hourly people, about 20 on a support staff, run a one-shift operation at this point. And what we're saying right now is our core manufacturing competencies really are around blast, weld, and paint. So, again, part of us being involved in this manufacturing association is we really want to share some of the experiences and lessons we've learned throughout our journey, not only personally but as a business, but also volume helps everybody, and where can we strategically fit partnerships to work together. So the type of business that we're really going after is blast, weld, and paint. And from a supporting competency here, also just looking at material flow and kitting and really being good at that. A couple of takeaways here that built the background for what we did here at Sheyenne Tooling, or what we're doing at Sheyenne Tooling and Manufacturing. In Litchfield, basically the big challenge there was the forecast came down, so it was, what are we going to do to absorb those hours or maintain our cost structure? And the other piece was, it was a complete stall build environment. So stall build environment, I'm not sure how familiar you guys are with that, but a lot of times it's difficult to manage. And at the end of the day, what we did in Litchfield, and I've got a couple pictures further on in the presentation, was we basically implemented a kitting process, created a moving weld line, and at the end of the day, it was about 25% improvement in non-value added time, and it created 4,000 additional square feet of manufacturing space, of which we were able to bring in additional product and fill up those hours. A couple of the big projects that I worked on in Gwinner was really the transformation back to Gwinner being a loader weld and assembly shop. Back in 2008 and 2009, what happened with the economy is everything slowed down, orders dried up, and they ended up closing Bismarck factory, which was mainly their excavator factory. So at that point in time, they put all of that into the Gwinner factory, and it created a lot of inefficiencies. Yeah, there was a lot of equipment and a lot of things happening there, but it was so jammed in there that nothing was really happening efficiently. So what I was involved with and the teams that I worked with at Bobcat were really about getting that back to a loader factory that operated efficiently and really leveraged each factory's competencies. But the common theme here is really about increasing capacities, optimizing flow, and making sure that your operators are hands-on, doing what they need to be doing and not searching and doing non-value added things. So building this up here in Cooperstown, really what we're about is we're about moving from a job shop facility into a manufacturing facility. And at the end of the day, what we preach at, what I've learned from a lot of great people at Bobcat, what we preach at Sheyenne is it's really around our keys to the kingdom, and it's giving everybody the capability to answer, what's my plan for today? Do I have everything I need to be successful? And do I have any safety or quality issues? So it's really about setting up processes that allow for this to happen. It's our goal that we can go out to anybody in the shop, whether it's a painter, whether it's a welder, assembler, a foreman, and we can ask them that and they'll be able to answer those questions. So I know this is a little bit of a visual, but as I was putting this together, I was trying to figure out the best way to articulate this. Here's the factory basically at the first of the year when we started. And really what you can see here is it's just a lot of broken up little chunks. Let me back up here. If we look at where we're at right now, we're basically on this street right here. Or a block over, I'm sorry. So this is an old bowling alley. This is our main factory. This is our outside lot, and then we also have a Morton building here. The key things that I'm going to focus on today are really around the main factory and what we've done so far and what our future plans are. So the main factory here, if you look at the northeast corner of this factory, is where we did auger weld. There was a bunch of parts in there so that they could get their parts, miscellaneous storage, and then we also did auger assembly. At the same time, this is the old bowling alley in Cooperstown. There was some miscellaneous tube weld there, and we were also had parts there and had things available there. What we needed to do was we needed to free up some space so we could bring in another line of business, help us with volume, help us with hours. But the other piece of it is you can see every one of these boxes here basically has, okay, we did machining, we did weld, but it also had parts storage. And parts were scattered throughout the factory. And what happened at the end of the day is people were rocking around looking for parts. If they were welding, if they were assembling, there's lots of forklift traffic, a lot of foot traffic. Everybody was looking for parts. And we weren't close to being able to answer that question if they had what they needed to be successful for the day. So if you look at our future roadmap, again, I apologize for this all being small, but really focusing on flow. That old auger assembly weld area is completely gone. We saw that as an opportunity to consolidate all of our tube weld. We've got all the parts available in this old bowling alley building to be able to free up this space. And what this is our parts kitting area. So basically we've created this part staging area that whenever we've got a welder and he's got a job, whenever we've got an assembler and he's got a job, our goal is to basically present them with the parts and give them confidence that they know they've got everything to start and finish that job. Just another little thing I'm going to point out here. We've got our part storage area. At this point in time, we've still got our plasma machine here. We are, over the Christmas break, we'll be moving our plasma machine and actually getting another one. So our goal is basically we can bring material in, cut that material, moving our brake right next to the plasma machine so we can bend it. So basically, cut, bend, kit, and then it's distributed to the area of the shop that it needs to go. And I can walk through that with you guys as we go through the factory tour if you guys are willing or able to come over there. Another big change, we kind of had assembly happening at different points of the building. We're in the process right now of moving our assembly over to the Morton building and at the same point having a kitted assembly process. So same thing there. We do have a little bit of waste going back and forth between facilities, but as long as it's not multiple times, we can deliver to the operators what they need to be successful. At that point, we move assembly down here. We can start shipping. Again, it's back to if you just look at, a value stream map, you should be able to see all the lines crossing back and forth and figuring out how to straighten that out. So our goal here is at the end of 2020, we'll be receiving in one end of the factory, shipping out the other, and we'll be in a position to basically give the operators what they need. So I've got a few videos here that just kind of show a little bit about our transformation. It really starts here. This is the beginning of our process. We're going to start in the kitting. We'll go into what our weld shops looked like before and after, and then we'll come down to this area. This was another big change for us. This area down here in the southeast corner used to be assembly, used to have a lot of part storage. We've completely gotten rid of that, and we've gotten heavy painting and heavy blasting capabilities. I think this should start. Maybe. So just a video here. We did, at certain points in time, we have a drone, so we flew that through the factory. You can see here, this is our old auger weld assembly area. We've got our tube weld fixtures. We've got gantry here that used to be used for assembly, and then all this miscellaneous parts. We're going to go back out of that area, and then we're going to take a right down the aisle, and you'll, I think, see a quick snapshot. Here's some of racking that was there. Obviously there you can see there's no labels. We're really not sure what is in that racking. Here's a point in time in August. So if you're able to come over for the factory tour, this will look different. But here in August, again, we've transitioned this. There's no more tube weld. There's no more auger assembly. We've set up 2 rows of racks, and we're in the process here of basically going through, sorting a bunch of parts, and putting up our next rack. We've also moved our steel over here, and we're basically getting ready for the point in time which we bring our plasmas over along this wall. So we'll be able to bring our steel, put it on our plasma, bend it, kit it, and go out. Still a little bit of clutter there, which we continue to address. But here you can see just a difference like in these rackings, right? So real focus on making sure everything's labeled, we know where it's at, so that we can kit it efficiently and get it to the areas that need to have the parts so they can do their work. Just a couple of takeaways or lessons from this kitting area. Physical flow versus system flow. What we did is we came in here and we really focused on setting this up physically. so that it could manage the part flow. The other big piece of work that, lesson learned, I think we underestimated was just the work that has to be done in the system to facilitate all this. So we've got an ERP system. It manages our work orders, our part, when we need to order parts, when we need to make more parts. And a lot of work had to be done going through and setting up a kitting process within that system. The other piece, I call it E-BOM versus M-BOM. We had everything in terms of engineering bill of materials. So everything in our system was based off of how the engineering the engineering drawing was set up with respect to sub-weldments, sub-assemblies. And a lot of the times the way you need to structure things on a drawing or do things on the engineering side is completely different from the way you want to do it on the manufacturing side. So we did quite a bit of work on how we can configure our system to make both an engineering BOM and then also make it make sense for the manufacturing side of things. The other piece is we did add a supply chain lead. So basically it's a person that's responsible for how the parts flow through our facility every day. And that's a big piece as we continue to get different parts, setting up the labels, figuring out how to optimize this for our kidders is an important piece for us. So that was the northeast corner of our factory. Now we move to the west and we go into our weld shop. So here's what our weld shop looked like back in April. See there, we still had steel sitting there. So here's our weld shop. Again, we have racks and parts. Not really sure even really where our weld bays are at here. We've just got so many parts in there. The people in these areas looking through the racks, trying to find the parts they need to complete the weld jobs that they had in front of them. I think he turns around here. And really, I mean, just in general, you can see not a lot of, to me, it looks like it's a messy area, not a lot of organization.
How many weld stations are there over there?
Oh, what do we have? I would say 15. Yeah. So here's what it looks like in August. Again, no racks. This is a job shop area that we still have, still needed. No racks. Parts on the floor are kitted, waiting. There also should be a visual cue to the operator, basically showing them, hey, I've got work in front of me so I can keep working. I know I'm not going to run out of work. But doing a much better job of, visually, these are our weld bays. This is the work that I need to complete within these weld bays. And then over here is a additional gantry that we put in July. Basically gives us the capability to work with a lot heavier attachments that we're doing now. But the key point of emphasis that we're trying to communicate with the guys, we talk a lot about hours, how many hours we're getting through the shop. And really, it's not about everybody going in there and just trying to totally bust their ass every single day. It's about how do we do it smarter versus harder. So our goal is that we can present these parts to our welders in this example, and our welders spend their time pulling the trigger versus going around and looking for parts. We really look at this as phase one. Stall build, again, I'm not overly excited about stall build. This was just a step for us. Phase two comes where we can actually go through and look at work content and start understanding how we can put this in a moving weld line. The other piece that we're starting to explore is automation. For us to be more competitive in the work environment, it's how can we throw some robots at this stuff to do it more efficiently. I didn't have a lot of footage on this, but this is that blast and paint area in the southeast corner of our factory. You can see here, here's the old area, a lot of part storage. There was some miscellaneous assembly here. Now here's what it was in August. So we removed all the parts. We had to relocate a piece of equipment, but basically through organizing and centralizing all of this parts storage and going to this kitting process, we were able to free up all of this square footage. So this is new equipment. This is an automated blast booth. This is a liquid paint booth that again gives us capability to hang up to 8,000 pound attachments. It opened that space up for us and allowed us to basically get into this work. And the key piece here is, you know, as a contract manufacturing, we work with a lot of companies. We do a lot of bidding. We do a lot of quoting on different jobs. But we're really interested in finding partnerships where we can look at companies and understand our competencies and the opportunities to work together efficiently. And that was really the case here with these Geeth attachments. You'll be able to see a bunch of those if you go to the factory. We're the North America manufacturing facility for this Geeth brand. It's a heavy brand of attachments. And it was all about just working with them to understand what they needed. This is actually the same equipment that was used in that Litchfield, Minnesota facility to basically build these products. We worked with them, and throughout it all, you know, we're using the same equipment. It's just in our location with our workforce. So again, I mentioned a little bit earlier just about phase 1 versus phase 2. Phase 1 was just really, for us, it was an organizational phase. Again, getting to the point where we can present parts to our operators, allowing them to know what they have to be successful for the day. This is just another snapshot. This is that Litchfield, Minnesota facility of Bobcats. This area right here, you can see all the different weld bays, stall build, manually moving parts in and out of bays. This is the exact same area. So what this is this is a moving line here, and what they do is they kit up parts on these trays, and the parts move down this line to each bay, and the parts are coming basically automatically to that operator, and they're welding, doing what they need to do. It's all based off of a tack time. So it's done very efficiently. And the key to this was, one, setting it up so they had what they needed to be successful. The other piece of it here is, if it is a moving line, we all know that guys work faster. Some guys work faster, some guys work slower. What this did was, this allowed you to see that very easily. So if you had a slower guy that was not as fast at pulling the trigger, yeah, he'd have a bunch of trays, you know, backed up behind the bay. It didn't really help the guy because he really, you know, a lot of times just couldn't do it faster. But what it did, it made it visible for all the other guys, and they helped out, which is, you know, improved that throughput. So what were the tools that were used to get there? Basically, it was simple yellow belt tools. You know, you guys have all been through the lean courses and done that type of thing. Here's an example of a spaghetti chart. This is the before on the left side, the after on the right side. You know, you go out there and you map all the movement that the person was making, and here's what it looked like afterward. I mean, you can just see those gains right there. And then the other piece was time studies. You go out and you do your time studies so you know how much work content you got out there. This was all the different products that were manufactured in that facility. So you can see the green bars are basically the value-added time. The yellow bar was the non-value-added time, or the red lines, right? So after laying it all out, that's where we were able to choose a tack time. And then, you know, basically it was all of these different products can go down that same line utilizing the same welders, utilizing the same equipment. Yeah, there were a few here. You know, the value added time was higher than the tack time, so those were the exceptions. They still had to be dealt with on more of, let's say, a exception basis. In our case, you know, these are the products that we actually looked at outsourcing because they didn't really fit our processes. But you can see a little bit of the before and after. So this was a 24-inch excavator bucket, for example. You can see the time just over, 2,100 minutes. And the breakdown was, this was value added, this was non-value added, this was actually, we had a robot in the process to help us. Here was our tack time. So after everything was said and done, in this example, because we had all this non-value added time trying to get product in and out of the robot, we actually got rid of the robot and saved ourselves. And this is what it looked like. So we added our value added time. Obviously we were able to take that robot time, add it to value added time, and then we minimized the non-value added time to get us under attack time. Here's another example. This one was right on the border, but at least facilitated those meetings or conversations with the engineer on what do we got to do to keep this product. We want it to go down the line. And the final result was, yeah, we were able to get it below the tack time, keep that volume going. So none of this stuff is hard. I mean, when you think about it, it's going out there, spaghetti chart, just mapping what somebody's doing, time studies, and then organizing the information, and it can make a dramatic difference in the way you operate and your bottom line. In this instance, you know, it was very important for us from a cost structure. Litchfield was a smaller facility. Attachments, you can't have a lot of attachment, overheads in attachments. So it was very important that we kept and maintain a minimal cost structure. So just a few other points here to finish it up. We talk about why we do this, what are the results. In Cheyenne's case, what this did for us initially was it freed up available space for another line of work. If we talk about absorption improvement, there's a lot of different factors that go into absorption. You know, basically it's absorption or variance or whatever you want to call it, but it's tracking what's your manufacturing standards say versus what you're actually doing. And so far, basically year over year at Sheyenne, we've seen about a 52% improvement in our variances on our labor side. And I think there's a lot of opportunity to go yet. But again, like I said, there's many factors that go into this. You know, we've talked a lot about build strategy, whether you build to order, you build to forecast, or you build to inventory. Completely different way you manage things based off of these strategies. The replenishment strategy for parts, you know, we've had a lot of conversation there about, are we doing min-max? Are we using a Kanban? Are we doing it to schedule? Again, these are the strategies that kind of have to be defined before you go into making these changes so you know what type of setups you want. A couple of other things that are really big for us is, you know, what's the team metric? I think it's important you pick 2 or 3 important items that you measure throughout the facility. Keep it simple, but do it every single day. And one of my best mentors at Bobcat always said, if you want to improve something, the first thing you got to do is measure it. So figure out what you want to measure. That's what will lead to that improvement. Then obviously we at Sheyenne, we do a lot of different work. We still do a lot of job shop work. We do a lot of contract manufacturing, our own stuff. So different seasonality, different points of time. We have different products that go through. So obviously your different product mix, if you got big backlog versus short backlog, that's all going to impact your labor variance. So the other piece here, basically from being mature to being operational excellent, I always say that's the phase 1 to phase 2. It's basically going from that 50% efficient up to 80% efficient. And that's really when you get into your moving lines, you get into the projects about removing non-value added time. And at the end of the day, just kind of circling back, you know, that really allows you to simplify what we say is our keys of the kingdom, which is all about you know, what's my plan for today? Do I have what I need to be successful? And do I have any safety or quality issues? So that's what I had today. Do you guys have any questions?